Do you always need a photographer to take your photos to make that perfect Instagrammable shot? Whether you're working with a professional, an amateur, or your Instagram boyfriend or girlfriend? Short answer is no. I'm gonna give you my ultimate content creating secret this time. Let's do it. What's up? It's David K, aka Threadability, and before we go any further, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so that I can keep making videos that you like and we can stay connected. The question I get asked most often on my Instagram posts is, how did I take those photos? And the answer most of the time is, I took them myself. It was me and my tripod. It's taken me quite a bit of practice to learn how to take full body shots, detail shots, product shots, and all the way that I like them. And I wanna share what I've learned with you. Now, when I was putting together this video, I realized that there's a lot of information that I could share. Everything from posing to the actual photography, it's a lot. So I've broken it down into a few steps. We're talking equipment, prep, mindset, pose, and process. Because there's so much information I could share on each of these, I'm going into a little bit of detail in each one. So if there's one that you want to know more about, make sure to comment down below and I can make a part 2 or we can discuss it. Remember, I'm not a professional photographer and I'm not taking away anything from anyone who is. Sometimes I just need photos pretty quickly and cheap. But if you do get a chance to work with a photographer, make sure to make the most of it and collaborate with them. First step, let's talk equipment. I'm telling you everything that I bring with me on a shoot. Obviously, minus the actual outfits and clothes. Step 1, a camera. Now, I use an EOS Rebel SL2. It's a pretty basic Canon camera. I got this when I first started and wasn't sure exactly how much money I wanted to spend, but it's done a good job. I'm actually thinking of upgrading soon because it's time, but I do want to say that you don't need a full expensive setup to get started. I use 2 lenses. One is the 18-55 and it came with the actual camera. This is good for those wider angle shots where I can get more of the outfit and more of the background. And I also have a fixed 50mm lens. This one is great for detail and portrait shots. If you want more on the specs of these, I'll have them down below. For now, I say use what you have until you can graduate to something a little bit more expensive and higher quality. Number 2, you're gonna need your phone. And there's a couple of things here. First, if you don't have a full camera setup, then chances are you have a pretty decent camera on your phone for IG photography. So use that if you need it. The second thing, and what I use it for mostly, is actually to connect my camera to my phone via the Canon Camera Connect app. Most newer model cameras are gonna have that Wi-Fi Bluetooth connectivity, and this will help you actually set up and take your photos while you're out in the field shooting. The nice thing is that I can actually adjust the camera settings while I'm shooting with my phone. If you have a camera that doesn't have the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth setup, you may want to invest into an external remote or shutter so you can get those photos. Or you're gonna have to become very good friends with that timer, especially if you're just using your phone as a camera. Number 3 is a tripod. I use this pretty standard one to get all my shots and it makes it a lot easier to balance the camera and get into the positions that I need. If you don't have a tripod right now, you may have to get creative and prop your camera or phone up on books or bags. I've seen it all, but it still works. Or you can also look at different locations with ledges or different areas that you can actually hold your camera. Sometimes even your car works. A major tip on choosing the right tripod is making sure that it can actually carry the weight of your camera. I've seen a few take a tumble and trust me, that is a stomach drop kind of feeling. If you're just using your phone, then I recommend making sure that your tripod has one of these phone adapters. It just screws into the top and holds your phone in place. Makes it super useful and steady. The last thing is to be really careful on those windy days. Those tripods can go timber and I have the scratches on my lenses and camera to prove it. Number 4 is a couple of batteries. Now, self-shooting can take a little while, sometimes upwards of 4 hours, so I make sure to bring 2 separate fully charged batteries so that I'm good to go for the entire shoot. Number 5 is SD cards. I bring 2 with me always just so I can make sure I have enough space. I don't want to run out of any storage on my camera while I'm doing a long shoot with a lot of outfits. Trust me, if you're self-shooting, you're gonna fill up that camera pretty quickly with the number of photos that you take. Number 6 is just kind of a personal one, but Bring some water, maybe even bring some snacks, because it could turn into a long day and you want to stay hydrated and not get hangry. That turns a shoot day pretty sour. That's it. That should be all the equipment that you need to take photos of yourself. Obviously, you're still gonna need the clothes and props for whatever vision that you have in mind, but even if you don't have your own camera, I think doing this with a phone and some of the other equipment that we have here is gonna get you that perfect Instagrammable shot on your own. Let's talk prep. Now, I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but I do wanna stress that some forethought is going to help set up a smooth self-shooting day. If you can, plan your photo concepts and your locations before the day of the shoot. If you're gonna have multiple outfits in multiple locations, it's going to take longer, and obviously you're gonna be traveling between each. If you're just starting out, maybe keep it to one location so that you can stay in one place and get in the groove of it. Make sure everything's packed the day before, because you want that next day to be smooth. If you're packing the day of and you're rushing, that's gonna add to your stress. And honestly, the first time you self-shoot is already a little bit stressful because you wanna get everything done. Minimize that for yourself. I also recommend packing in the order that you're going to be shooting, whether that's packing your car or the bag. Having this sort of route makes you way more efficient on the day of your shoot. You should also take into consideration the time of day that you're gonna be shooting. AKA, are there going to be a lot of people around in the area, and what is the lighting going to look like? As far as people go, I'm not even talking about shooting in public. I'm talking about whether you're okay with having people in the background of your photos. You also wanna think about parking locations, because you wanna make it easy to go back and forth from your car to change if you need to. The last thing you wanna do in terms of prep is allot enough time in your day for the actual shoot. I shot 3 outfits the other day, and it took me about 2.5 hours to get everything done. It used to take me almost 4 as I was getting into it and figuring out what I liked. Now, when I show up to a location, I can usually bang a few out and get it done pretty quickly, but that takes some practice. And sometimes it clicks, and other times it just takes longer because it's not quite coming together. It's all about that patience and practice. If you're just starting this for the first time, try just going out with one outfit so you can figure out how you like to set up and what your process is. There's a couple of things that come to mind when we say mindset, and here I'm talking about patience and confidence. I've said it before, but patience is key if you're about to try photographing yourself for the first time. You're going to feel awkward at first and stiff, but as you learn what you like and how to work your camera, it'll become easier. You just can't really hack the time it takes to figure out self-shooting. It's taken me almost 2 years to get to a place where I'm comfortable with self-shooting and can get photos pretty quickly. Specifically, it takes time to figure out what angles work for you, what posing works for you, framing a shot, and taking multiple photos until you're happy with them. Now, I'm gonna give you some tips later on in this video, but if you need more direction, I can make a part 2. Just let me know down below in the comments. It can take a while, it can be frustrating, but stick to the tips that I give you in this video and you'll be able to get the hang of it pretty soon. The second part of mindset is confidence, and I'm really talking in terms of shooting out in public by yourself. Yes, the fact is that people might stare, but to be honest, they'd probably be staring at you even if you were working with a photographer anyway. Work on getting comfortable in those public situations so you can get the shot that you need, and just be as respectful as you can to everyone else. Like I mentioned before, we're not gonna dig too deep into posing, but I do wanna talk about it in terms of camera placement. Since you are shooting by yourself, you're not gonna have a photographer that tells you where to look or what angle is working best for you. And that's tough if you're starting out. So I have a few basic tips to get you started. First, be mindful of the height of the camera in relation to you. If the camera's down low and pulled away from your body because you're getting that full outfit shot, try to keep that chin low and shoulders back. You'll create a nice clean jawline even if you don't regularly have one, and that always looks good in photos. That's also gonna make you look taller, which definitely looks good in photos. Additionally, think about the movement in your photos. I like to create triangles with my body so I don't look so stiff. If you're going to be stiff and centered in your photo, you're gonna get lost as the subject most of the time. Luckily, you can review all of the photos on your phone before you actually post them to Instagram, so keep retaking and figure out your movements and posing until you're happy with it. Once you get more comfortable, you can actually start experimenting with more dynamic posing and more dynamic movements in your photos. I've been doing that recently in my last IG posts. Putting in some of this posing work and practice on your own is actually going to make it easier to work with a photographer later on. If you know your angles, they can direct you less and you get good photos right away. All right, time for the good stuff. How do we actually set up on the day of the shoot and take a good photo? First things first, set up your shot. You wanna know if you want background and architecture in it, your full outfit, or just torso up. What we're doing is framing the shot so we understand where the camera needs to go and can visualize the whole image in the process. Once you have the shot set up, it's time to actually get everything in place. So get your tripod out, attach your camera, attach your lenses, make sure your batteries and your SD cards are installed, connect your phone via the app if you have that, and make sure everything is running smoothly. Once everything is up and running, take a look at your camera settings, either from your phone that's connected or on the actual camera. Now again, I'm not a full-fledged photographer, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but you wanna check your aperture settings, your ISO. Basically what you're looking for is no bright white hotspots and no heavy shadows that are losing any detail. Now for the actual tripod location in relation to what you're shooting, I recommend setting it up at an angle. If you shoot flat onto a surface, you're gonna lose a lot of detail and it's gonna look less dynamic. Even if the surface is flat or your backdrop is flat, if you come at it at an angle, it's gonna look a lot more interesting once the photo is finished. Now, if you're shooting a full outfit pic and you want some of that architecture or background detail in your photo, I recommend starting with the tripod low and shooting up at yourself. That's gonna make you look taller and create some nice angles and actually capture a lot more of that detail. Now, you don't wanna stand too far from the camera either because you're gonna get lost in the actual foreground of the image. If you're shooting portrait or detail shots, I would start the camera at about eye level and then adjust the height as you need it depending on what you're shooting. I've done some crazy positions of the camera being behind and over my shoulder or even just above the shoes to get some of those good details. Don't be afraid to get into some wacky positions. You gotta get the shot and the camera's in one place, so you gotta do the movement. Once the physical shot is set up and you're ready to actually start shooting, get in the frame. Use your phone if it's connected to your camera or shoot a couple of test shots just to make sure your camera is focusing on you and getting the right amount of detail. You wanna make sure everything's absolutely perfect before you actually get into the full set of shooting. Once the details are dialed in, I set my camera to a 10-second timer and continuous shooting mode. So I get about 8 shots per session. Now this allows you to do some natural movements if you're not comfortable with posing. Once you shoot that first set, review the photos. Make sure you're happy with the body position, the angles, and adjust what you didn't like. Repeat the process until you find a set of photos that you're happy with. Another tip here is that if you're shooting specifically for Instagram, keep in mind that crop ratio. Download the photo from the app and put it in the Instagram app so you can tell what's getting cut off and what's cropped. I usually crop for a 4:5 ratio, but that means that you're gonna have to frame that photo correctly so you don't lose any detail. Once you're happy with those standard wide angle and detailed shots, you can start getting a little bit more creative with what angles you're taking the photos from. Try everything and anything. You can adjust it and see what you like. So before we wrap up, let's talk about the pros and cons of shooting by yourself versus shooting with a photographer. Let's start with the pros. Number one, you get complete creative control. This means you get to shoot what you want, how you want, frame the shot, and edit how you like. It's great for the process and practice. Number two, you can save some cash. If you don't have a photographer that you can collaborate freely with, then this is a great way to save money and still create plenty of content. Number three is learning your angles. I think that's a pro of all this because as you practice, you're gonna figure out how to interact with light sources and what angles look best for what you shoot. Number four, content on demand. You're working on your own schedule so that you don't have to coordinate with anybody else and you can get content virtually right when you need it. All right, so let's talk about the cons, and there are a few. For starters, it definitely takes more time to shoot by yourself. Like I said before, it can take upwards of 4 hours if you're just getting started. Whereas with a photographer, you can knock out 4 outfits in maybe 2 hours or so, almost half the time. The next con, and maybe it's less of a con and more of just a difference, but a professional photographer will most often have better equipment. I mean, most of the ones that I've worked with have better equipment than I do, and it shows in the photos. But like I said before, you don't need the fanciest equipment to really get started here. The other thing about self-shooting is that you lose some of that creative collaboration when you're not working with a photographer. I've worked with photographers that have suggested great angles that I couldn't get with a tripod, or just great concept ideas that we've been able to work through together to get a better shot than I could do by myself. There is no doubt that a photographer brings a lot of creative value to a shoot, but we're not always in a position that we can work with them, so you have to make do with what you have and get creative. Flex these skills so you can get better at them. Practice, 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 patience, and more practice. That's what it takes to actually level up your self-photography game. It's taken me a couple of years to get to a point where I'm ready for more dynamic poses and then I can show up to a location and get the shots that I need in a relatively quick amount of time. I still come out with several hundred photos that I have to review and edit down to about 10 per outfit. But I still get content when I need it and that I can be happy with. Try this process out and let me know if it works for you. If you have specific questions, leave them down below in the comments and I'll address them. You can also message me. You can master the process and really make your Instagram pop with photos. Thank you so much again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe here and follow me on Instagram. I always label which photos I take by myself in the caption so that you can ask me specific questions about those. Until next time.